Good afternoon everyone and welcome to American Civil War and UK history. And we are here in a special location. So we are in Washington DC, and I'm just going to flip you over so you can see over the road. So over there is Ford's Theatre, obviously a very famous place. And over here we have the boarding house where Lincoln will die. But to tell us the story is Jessie.
Hi, my name is Jessie Wilinski. I actually used to work here at Ford's Theatre a little over 12 years ago. This is the place right here where Abraham Lincoln passed away. Before that, he was at Ford's Theatre. Abraham Lincoln was a person who really liked going to the theaters. He was at this place at least 12 times prior during the Lincoln administration. He's been to several other theaters across the District of Columbia. It was his escape from being wartime president during the 1860s. And what made this night, of course, in April 1865 important was that a few nights beforehand, Abraham Lincoln gave a speech. This speech basically said that Abraham Lincoln was hoping that African Americans could have the right to vote. Not that his exact words. There was somebody in that crowd by the name of John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth was not at all a fan of that statement. In fact, he had plans of kidnapping Abraham Lincoln beforehand. From that point forward, John Wilkes Booth would want to kill Abraham Lincoln. On the night of April 14th, 1865, John Wilkes Booth would have that chance. He would shoot Abraham Lincoln in the back of his head, jump off out of the presidential booth at the time, no pun intended, go on the stage with his bloody knife and say, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always to traitors, a coincidental term from somebody who didn't believe that everybody had the same rights. Ran out of the back and would run off, eventually be killed at Garrett's Farm in Virginia. Abraham Lincoln would die in his house 7:22 the next morning, right in this house, the Petersen House. And the boarding houses became a very important thing during the Civil War because they would house a lot of the influx that would come into Washington, D.C. during the Civil War. But Abraham Lincoln would die here. Edward M. Stanton himself would run the government from this building that night. He would start the investigation and was actually acting president of the United States at that time. Abraham Lincoln was not just the only victim of that night. John Wilkes Booth had plans of having two other people from the presidential cabinet, maybe three, if Grant showed up that night here with Lincoln, because he was invited but decided to turn it down. Two other people would be assassinated that night. John Wilkes Booth was hoping that Vice President Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward would be assassinated. Both of those attempts would be botched. But Abraham Lincoln died here 7:22 that night. The building you see across the street now, in the future, would end up becoming a pension office, and then it would be refurbished to become an active theater again, owned by the National Park Service with conjunction with Ford's Theatre Society. If you see all these people coming out of that building right now, they just finished watching A Christmas Carol. So it is now still an active theater. They have a gift shop here and right here. Mary Surratt, who was considered as one of the conspirators, her home is up that way. It is now considered a Chinese restaurant, so you can actually have dinner at the place where Mary Surratt had the conspirators housed. The building here would join the National Park Service as well. For a while, it was actually a private museum as well. William Petersen would die the next year from an opioid overdose on the National Mall. Some of the people that were with Lincoln or were associated with him, for example, William Rathbone would become minister to Prussia, but he would eventually end up what we know with today as with PTSD and would pass away in Germany. the scribe that night, his name was Corporal Tanner, James Tanner. He would lose both of his legs prior to this in a battle. He would actually end up becoming a very successful politician and a commissioner of military pensions after the Civil War. I have a book here I highly recommend called Manhunt by James Swanson. There's another book I forgot to bring. It's called American Brutus. Both of those books I highly recommend for the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. This place is open and free to the public, though. They still have plays here. You have to check ahead to make sure there's plays or not. It is a ticket entry, but the tickets are for free. So, if you have any questions about this place, please contact the National Park Service or Forest Theater Society.
And I'm going to finish with going up the steps that Abraham Lincoln would have been carried and not come back. Well, not alive anyway.